Okay, what a good group. Welcome, everybody, to St. John's Episcopal Church. I'm Barbara Cottrell, and I'm a member of the vestry here. And we are so excited that we can open up this beautiful space for events like this one. This evening, you are in for a real treat. We have not one, but two stellar poets with many, many, many accomplishments behind their names. So many that I'm going to let them introduce each other. Welcome, we're glad you're here.
Oh, thanks so much for being here. This is really wonderful to be able to read in this space with my son. I'm introducing him. I've been ordered not to brag about my kid. So this is Darius. He recently graduated from the second grade school in Massachusetts. And he's at another school getting an unimportant degree in Texas. He's obviously, I'm a proud father and very excited. If I were to do this professionally, I would just say Darius Atefat-Peckham is the recent winner of the Autumn House Press Prize for poetry. His book, yes, I know. His first poetry collection, Book of Kin, is coming out in the fall from that press. He is also the editor of his birth mother's collected works. I'm a widower. We lost Susie back in 2004. She had an excellent collection. It's called Deep Are These Distances Between Us. And Darius did the incredible work of putting together all of those poems and getting them out into the world. And that's out through Cabin Crate Press and is available right now. I'm going to just say, in a professional way, he is well published. He has work both published and forthcoming in Poetry Magazine, the Georgia Review, the Kenyon Review, among others. These are some of the best journals in the discipline. And he's an amazing person who I love very, very, very much. So I give you Darius Atefat-Peckham.
Thanks, Dad. This is really special. I don't know if this is the first reading we've done in person together.
We read a little bit at Writers Can Read once when you were 12.
Oh, really? Okay. I don't remember that. But I was 12. But anyway, it's special to me because I don't, in recent memory, I haven't gotten to do a reading live with Dad. That's why I'm going first, because he's a really good reader and I can't follow him up. But I'll talk about that in my introduction. It's special for other reasons. This church was the church I grew up attending. I was an acolyte and I read books in the pew, and I also paid attention. That's multitasking. But yeah, no, church growing up was always one of the things that made me want to be a writer. I thought, especially, the sermons that I got to hear. I was blessed with really amazing priests growing up, and some names that you guys would know, but or you wouldn't know, like Kevin, my priest at Trinity when I was younger, and then Lisa, and then Greg now, who's incredible. And Ray, oh my God, of course Ray. But yeah, Ray, I wasn't home a whole lot when Ray was preaching, but I did really enjoy all of his preaching. But yeah, no, I always looked up to these people, and I thought that their sermons were beautiful and literary and spiritual, and it's kind of what I wanted to bring part of that into my poetry. So I'll be reading from my book, Book of Kin. It's coming out in October, and really it's a book about family, as you can hear from the title. And it's a book about language learning, connecting with my Persian heritage, about grief, about joy and love and all those things. And I'll just get started. But yeah, this first poem is called Learning to Pray. Practicing yoga with my second mother, my father maneuvers, splits his hip bone like roots the yogi on screen sings, unfurling into the ground. I think of my great-grandfather, my first mother, a young girl watching him from beyond the doorways and praise his body in shapes and forms toward God, his mustache brushing the ground. And I wonder whether my grandparents are real Muslims, real Iranians, real parents. I could ask, though I've never found them bent to Mecca or to anything. Vivi, my grandma, having fruit, saying she doesn't need some compass to show her which direction faces home. My mother and brother are every direction and no direction at once. She asked me if I understood. You understood? And the world slows. And I am the old man who often thrusts his furious head through the shutter of my face. My chin tilts heavy on my chest, my body whirling without ever leaving my mat. I listen for it. The earth's warning. How close it is to rain. My father, my brother and mother, my second mother. Even this, a tiny spider balancing on a hair on my arm, the roots of its little legs trying to make a home there. No, I have a love-hate relationship with spiders. We're working on it. Yeah, I'll try. Sorry, Carol. So I love. So this is funny. This is a poem for Rachie, actually, who is here. Rachie's my mom, my stepmom, who I call Rachie. So she'll come up as that term in my book. But one of the images is I just wanted to explain before I get into it is about turtles. I really love turtles, and they come up in the book too. And they have this thing that they do where they come up on the beach and it'll seem like they're crying. But actually they're excreting like salt water. So it's this thing that they've kind of evolved to do in order to survive their conditions. And I think it's really beautiful that, we look at them and we think they're weeping, but they're not really. And this is called Second Mother for Rachie. In dreaming, I am not terrified of my death, but of yours. How selfish. Persians take special interest in dreams. In dreams, my professor presses Farsi into my mouth like gold, refusing to take soil. It is not prophecy, but everything below. I have risen from that kind of sleep to no one. From the tub as a boy, I'd swoon, then collapse. If my father hadn't heard the soft body hit, I'd rise from the linoleum, shaky, alone, and run to you, excited almost for your concern, to be embraced and alive, in the holding pattern of one's stoppered breathing. I name you, mothers, how selfish. What we secrete in these bodies is not called weeping. This next poem is called The Birthday Fairy, and it's when I was little, my dad used to sneak into my room really creepily and blow up balloons and cover my floor with them every single year. So I would wake up and the balloons were covering my floor. And then one year, he even put like presents like going down the stairs. The birthday's really important to us. The Birthday Fairy. I never believed in you, but your calling pinned my eyes shut. Radiance followed the murmured question of my name. Darius, you awake? Blustering planets, awkward, gentle flight of them like anything new and sewn. I held the balloons to my eye like stained glass and looked in at the light. There seemed to be millions. I counted to stay awake. I believed we invented everything. Tradition, my mother, all that joy carried from the time before. Dad, grinning in the doorway, looks like the birthday fairy made you a visit. Even then, I knew belief was just a story I told myself. only tasting it like a kiss to be sure. Can you believe I thought you were my father, who sat in the living room most nights, weeping into his hands, who moaned the night from throne, my eyes sewn shut, peeking through the dark of my mother's long lashes, whose breath lives inside me, whose light hooks through the face of me now. This next poem is called Of Blueberries. I also love blueberries. I write poems with a lot of things I love. One of my teachers was like, one time, like, you can't put everything you love in every poem. Yes, yeah. I took that as a challenge. Of Blueberries. Just minutes before the anniversary, I am inexplicably thinking of blueberries and the slowness of my love crushing some with her teeth. Golra is flower-faced, lacking equivalence. I've seen many things I haven't seen, like a man sanitizing his utensils methodically with an onion on Peckham Avenue, like the swift bursting of many fruits. Under ideal conditions, a blueberry bush lives 60 years. The way my mother lived, maybe, half the life of a blueberry bush, crown jewel of Iran, first masterpiece of God, eyes dark sheen before ruin. In Persian, there's no good word for blueberry. In the soil there, this fruit, its too much life, is made nearly impossible. And so I go, seeking in the silence between my beloved's teeth, and as I see it, these moments are myth. Eyes, little blue wounds of flesh risen like night. It is just comfort, and I am just thinking. I'm always thinking. There's only so much life to live, only so much time under ideal conditions. So much, only so much. Thank you. And the second poem is called Imagine the Lake. It's a poem with the first title that goes into the first line, so just keeps going. Imagine the lake. Cyrus is alive and dancing about with stones in his pockets, checking behind. All kid brothers do. He trudges into the lake, a fisherman on the rocks, letting wave after wave get his socks wet. The water reaches his chin. His Buzz Lightyear tennis shoes sink into the mud of Lake Michigan. He waits there. There is a woman overlooking the water. Vivi, clear now, on a bench, just thinking for imaginative hours. We are behind her, arriving home from a long walk down the lake shore, shaking our heads. She's waited, we say, all this time? We look away. We are talking of escape, the planetarium, a version of ourselves who may have thought, how big the universe, existence beyond this array of planets and stars, as real as the Earth, some great shell, the turtles beneath us as we swim the translucent sea, coming up for air. Turtle, we cry as they disappear. Turtle, turtle, as they appear again. We shout even when, over and over, we are unsure, specular, peering in through the water. But this one I read one for Richie. I'm going to read one for Dad. This one's called First Love Poem, and it's about getting a D in English in my when I was in like second grade. But I was terrified. Oh my gosh, because First Love Poem for Dad. I was always afraid of you. Your angry grieving, your stomping around the house, and night moaning, and frightening the dog. I was always afraid of ruin, so that once I took a report card and changed the fearful thing from D to B. A defection. Botched it, of course, slashed a line through the heart of it, and decidedly stole into the nighttime storm lissom as dirt. Treading back to the house, spying on you alone, working in the dishes in the kitchen, your hands softening in the stream. You were always so compassionate. So when you interrupted my 8 p.m. cartoons, your hair dripping with the outside rain like Indiana Jones, I wondered what it was you've been trying to say. And when you held my ink-streaked note to the sky, asked, "What is this?" I might have answered, "It was my first love poem." Okay, so I'll do one more. And it's about a trip. It's the only poem I wrote on this trip that we went to for my graduation in Ireland. And we like splurged and we rented an Airbnb that was like part of a castle. And it was kind of awesome. And then Rachel kept saying like the whole time, "We're staying in a castle." And it was just really, I don't know, it was very beautiful to get to be there with them. The scene unseen. It was also really creepy. Because it was like definitely haunted. And like you wake up and like a window had flown off its hinges because of all the like. I couldn't wait to get out. No, it was pretty cool, but definitely scary. The scene unseen. Tubberg Castle, Kilkenny, Ireland. Someone is always wishing to be in or out of these thin places. I've woken 3 times in this gloaming to a window blown off its hinges. 3 new spider bites marching across Rachel's chest this morning. Dad sings to check the acoustics. We booked this place because we only have one life, but now I'm skeptical. Am I afraid? The cows calling questions across one field to the next. The absence of birds who made their nest a mile high in the stone masonry of my window are a far cry from the hauntings I'm used to. In the lack of mirror in my bathroom, I'm learning to self-soothe. How did moving forward get to be through such abundance? So that my coop, slowed by the cold thrill of a fog-cloaked ocean, Dad's hands reaching for my shoulders, many shoulders, stubborn, insatiable, alive. Rachel snapping us into stillness. What is a haunting? Anyway, I feel I could sleep here for ages. Thank you. I get to introduce my dad, who I always went to these readings and just like thought he was so cool that I wanted to be a poet. But that's, yeah, definitely one of the reasons I wanted to be a poet in the first place. And you'll see why in a second. But he has books out with amazing questions, and he has a collective coming out with all those books in one, which is like my dream book. Coming out in the fall. And he also has a book, and that's called Any Moonwalker Can Tell You, which is a sick title. And he also has an astronaut on this cover, which I also have an astronaut on the cover, so that's good. Although he writes more about space than I do. I'm using it for aesthetic value. But yeah, he has a book called Gone the Sun coming out as well this summer, which is nonfiction. He does like all the genres. And he is my best friend, and I love him very much.
So this is the book, and the cover is by one of our graduates from Marshall University, Lily Yerskis, who basically does all the covers for my books now. If I have a book come out, I call Lily, and she does something amazing for it. So I'm going to stand up because I'm old, and if I sit too long, my back hurts. So I'm going to stand, and I'm more comfortable that way anyway. I'm going to start with a poem about Darius, and with a poem that at least begins by being about Rachel. So Darius did the family gave the world really an incredible gift in getting his birth mother, Susan Atefat-Peckham's second book. That was wonderful. It was also difficult for me, and possibly in some ways for Darius as well, because he would go places, and he's always had this issue. You can see the incredible family resemblance. He looks a little more like his mother than me, and people will say things. Oh, it's like having Susie back. It's like Susie reincarnated. And there's a lot of talk about legacy, and having been the son of a very large personality and presence. And I'm also a junior, so I carry that with me. I know that sometimes it can be very difficult to live partly as a ghost of someone else. And I get concerned about that for him. And he'd been writing a whole bunch of ghazals. How did I do? That's it. Okay, that's fine. How's it correctly pronounced?
Well, it's complicated.
Okay, all right. So anyway, so I don't normally write formal poems. But he'd been sending me these, and then I was like, oh, I'll try this. And so I wrote this poem for him called Drive, and it's ghazal. I'm not going to go through the form for you. It just has a lot of repetition, and it's involved in it. In the couplets. Supposedly, you should be able to arrange them in any order. It should still work, and sort of. Mine's a little bit of a broken ghazal, but I did the best I could. Drive. A ghazal for my son on the 20th anniversary of the death of his mother and brother. I can't grip the wheel of any car without the neuropathic burn of each long drive. That rusted Corolla swallowing 500,000 miles of road, my hips screaming. The long drive home could be the title of our book if we ever wrote one. Sometimes I think we should, which is to say, I miss having you in my rear view. It takes a strong drive to keep going. Sometimes I need a push. We had to move forward, no choice. From ocean cold as winter steel to fields of waving corn, death to life. Where do I go? Drive fast and everything becomes a green-gray blur. Once on 81 carving north through summer, we passed a car aflame. It exploded, kiln hot. My skin felt thin as glaze for hours. Wrong. Drive away from any accident, no matter the miles. A flash remains behind the cornea. I remember how dark yours were, pupils like atoms, and the doors coated in soot. I think The Long Drive Home could be an album title if we ever wrote one. Remember the singing? Beatles, Elvis, Stones, our voices stitched together to unravel in a shout, unhinging the song. Drive with anyone, looping around cities, rising and falling through mountains, and you will cling to one another, each hoping the other has the parachute. There is none. Drive anywhere, anywhere. Wind in your hair because the AC fried 100,000 miles ago. Sometimes I think I passed my death on a desert road, waved, and kept on going. Son, drive away from your ghosts, not toward them. No matter how far you have to go, a grave is not a home. This ghost knows what it means to be haunted and to burn. Keep going, drive fast, snuff the flame and leave the smoke behind you. I know what it's like to feel as if you will explode. Am I the explosion, the wreckage? If so, let me go. It's a long drive home and time is short. If love must be a tether, lash your rib cage to a rocket, not a stone. All I asked was you outlive me. I didn't mean survive, live. Or what is it for? That long drive. Where were we going? There is no gap you need to cross or fill. You are no one's resurrection. Drive them wild, crazy with refusal, with silence, with your soul. Drive on anyway, anywhere. Once, east of Toledo, you fell asleep in your booster. The lights that slid across your face threw me to another time, another wife and son. I wept and kept going. Drive like that too long and you will find yourself alone or wrecked. Sing, scream your name alive at the top of your lungs, eyes wide open, swallowing the sun, aflame in the joy of this long drive.
Wow.
It's a little difficult to get through, actually. All right. So I'm going to read the one or two older poems and then move to the newer things. Actually, I'll start with this one. So I have an obsession with space. I always had it. Like, I was super into Star Wars and Star Trek as a kid. And, you know, what? Yeah, we share this Doctor Who, like classic Doctor Who. But I always had this thing, and I was fascinated with SETI and this search for extraterrestrial life. So this is called WOW signal. WOW signal was a signal picked up by the Big Ear. It's in Ohio. But I went my own direction with it. Most of my poems are about family, and they find their way back there eventually. But this is WOW signal, dredging light. It starts with a quote by Walt Whitman. I, too, am not a bit tamed. I, too, am untranslatable. Walt Whitman. I should mention, this is actually from a spoken word album called Still Running. If you've got Spotify or it's a shameless plug, or Apple Music or any streaming service, you can find those things there. It's Joel Peckham backed by Joel Peckham with Joel Peckham. I'm singing the harmonies, like there's music, there's singing, there's guitar, there's bass, but you're just getting it straight this time. All right. When it comes, it finds me shin deep in our creek as I bend my knees, lock elbows, and strain to dig down and in, and lift the tall grass from the water, heavy, sucking free the silt and sod and sediment, so when the storms of April arrive, the waters will not flood my lawn and threaten the foundation of my home. Summer, when everything sings and stings with its need to be uncontained and penetrate the skin, and I am at once the man with the bad hip and clicking shoulder and the teenager working for the landscaping company, his flannel caught in a branch as it dives into the chipper. And I am screaming and spinning out of the shirt away from the blades, and I am a boy watching in wonder his mother lift and turn and stretch across a high school stage in white tights and slippers. My sisters on either side, their long, thin backs growing wings, becoming birds that glide over the water, casting shadows that chase each other down the beach as I shout after them, slow down, wait for me. And the hound howling for hours through the steam of evening from behind the gate of the neighbor's yard, straining at his leash. And the sod and the silt and the grass, my hair as wet and heavy as the nearly drowned, but come back gasping. Everything insisting I am not confined in these yellow waders or this body or this creek. And the shovel is not a shovel, but a dish glittering with stars, which are the future and the past at once, sending their messages of birth and burial. Ear to the rail, cheekbone to the track, I receive, picking up vibrations that dance across the distances and through the skull to the tongue, with a tang of pomegranates reddening the lips. Somewhere on the burning sand of an ever-expanding beach, unmodulated waves that might have come from a lighthouse beacon somewhere in the constellation of Sagittarius, strained at full draw, aiming arrows across the heavens, flash and turn, turn and flash. Somewhere in Ohio, the astronomer shot through with wonder stares at a signal he's been waiting for without hope and desperate with need, works out the coordinates, searching for the source of what he sees. A message undecodable can say anything, everything. Old gods, sing the language of the sumac reaching for the water pipes beneath the basement, curled around the metal, tightening its grip. Or how the starlings wheel in a single wave, a wing. Play the notes in any sequence. I am feathered with your arrows. I am wading in the waters. I am dredging my creek. Come down from the mountains, staggering with light and heat. Oh. Wow. Thank you. Okay, this is another space. They're basic. That's why I titled it Any Moonwalker Can Tell You, because it's like that, and like there are 20 poems in this book called Any Moonwalker Can Tell You. I just couldn't figure out which one to go with, so I went with all of them. But this is astrocartography. This is set in a summer camp in Maine that I went to for 35 years. My father was the athletic director, and then I went there for a while. And then I left, and then the accident happened, and I went back. Then I ran a music program there, so it's at a pretty important part of my life. The nonfiction book coming out is set there. Anyway, this is called Astrocartography, and it's about boys doing awful things to each other in some ways. Astrocartography 1. When I was 10, I won a contest with a friend for holding my breath underwater. It was a dare, and I hated him for that. Hated them, boys naked and shivering in the sun, pointing from the floating dock, laughing. How they knew how much I feared the water and the dark, that pressure in the lungs, and how the cold stung my eyes wide in the murk. After he exhaled, exploding up and out, I stayed down there for another 10 seconds, just to make a point. Just to make a point. Then swam up lazy, slow, drifting as globes of light spun and streamed from my mouth and nose. For the rest of the day, I saw stars floating on the periphery of my vision. Sometimes I still do. 2. Like most, I have survived things no one should. But here we are, aren't we? Miracle of miracles. With another surgical scar, another loss, another lesson that doesn't apply to any other situation, and brains starved for oxygen. I am trying to believe that pressure and loss can focus the mind, or like the saints in a fire, bring visions. Did they hold their breath as the smoke rose up, or did they welcome the heat into their lungs, hoping to see God? It is terrifying to drown, and terrifying to live, and terrifying how quickly we adapt as we pull ourselves onto the dock as if nothing had happened, leaving the world behind only to realize much later that parts of us are changed or gone. And so I can't let go even as I stare down at my empty hands, swimming toward the bottom. I do not know what I hope to find. A single shoe unlaced, the skeletons of fish, a sippy cup, a teddy bear, a reason. Searching out what's missing, diving into that tear in the cosmos, trying to recreate an ancient map of stars to guide us home. Jump forward to some newer things. The last section of this is called Moonshot and Shining, because I couldn't use Any Moonwalker Can Tell You again, like it's used like 400 times in the book. But this is from that section of the book. I've not read this poem, I think, before. It's called The Edges of Things. And yeah, it does, there's a very short pseudo-blasphemy at the end, so I apologize. The edges of things. I miss the time when the world was only blurry at the edges. In the corner of the eye where I once thought ghosts lived. And when ghosts were only something that hovered on the periphery, not in, but outside parentheses. Something to be thrilled by, laughing, hiding beneath a fortress of blankets with my sisters when my parents had turned the lights off in their room in the renovated basement. A signal that we were on our own and should not bother them unless it was an emergency. And by emergency, I mean house fire, home invasion, nuclear Armageddon. Not a monster beneath the bed, not a bad dream. Now every night I feel ghosts rising like the bones in Ezekiel's vow. They are dancing. Now I want to throw the lights on, screaming, Lord, let my bones be boiled and bleached and played, a chiming percussive fill in the break that knocks you in the hips, drops you to your knees.
When did I begin to have to hold the page farther and farther away to make out the meaning? It makes me think of how my father's reading glasses began to gather in the strangest places, all over the house, on top of the toilet, in the crisping drawer of the refrigerator, on the label of a record still spinning. Maybe it is always about this urge to see, which is an urge to hold on to someone, something, as it slowly drifts down these rivers beyond our hands, beyond our noticing. Which is to say, I noticed, but didn't quite believe, telling myself I could still reach out and pull you back whenever I wanted. Now I see ghosts everywhere and everything. And it has been a long time since I believe in anything I see, never mind my reach. And I'm telling you, it scares me. And Jesus, but I miss my sisters.
I should have been keeping track of that. I even had a setup here. I'm gonna, so I lost my father from Alzheimer's, and when I first started writing the Any Moonwalker Can Tell You poems, it was just because I had a fascination with space. And then very slowly, as my father descended into dementia, and we lost him, yeah, it's hard to even get my mind around. My father passed away, but he's still living up here every day. For better or for worse, and so it became about that, really. So and about the kind of isolation he was experiencing. So I'm going to read, I think, 2 of these, and then I'm going to read one new one. This is called Any Moonwalker Can Tell You, and well, they all will be actually. Any Moonwalker Can Tell You. While circling the dark side out of contact with command, Apollo 10 started picking up a signal, whirring, whistling, strange sounds in a strange place, a strange land, strangers, desperate just to see the earth reappear on a horizon, silent, bristling with messages. How many signs have been shaped to our need for touch, fingertip to fingertip, with a reaching hand? Oh, to be grabbed around the wrist, pulled up and out. Even if there is no way to process it, there is always oscillation, vibration, everywhere is shaking. Deep inside the body, inside the module, there is a pulse, impulse. There is anticipation. Everything on the verge and waiting for someone or something to shape it. You can travel in silence, planet to moon and back, or like forgotten cosmonauts, ride the comet screaming all the way into the vacuum. We believe to be heard is to be seen, is to connect. Charged particles interacting is a wave, then scattering again. And we know how dangerous that can be. This urge to see an absence and reach into it, to begin to hear in nothing everything, mistake each echo in the emptiness for a sign, calling us out into oceans, caves, alleyways. We've convinced ourselves are tugging at our coat sleeve. In the music, scientists would claim it was only interference, 2 radio signals inhabiting the same sonic space. Symphonies have been created out of less. So I'm going to read 2. This one is, so I'm actually going to read instead. I'm going to read about my mom. So when my father passed, I was blessed to be not with him but with my mother. We had been there during the day at the hospice facility. And I was staying with my mother, and we left, and we actually watched the Austin Butler Elvis movie. That's what we did. We were sitting there watching the Elvis movie. We didn't know what else to do. We knew that it was the time was short and it was coming, but so we just watched Austin Butler.
But we went to bed, and then my mother, I woke up for no reason at all at about 3:35 in the morning. I'm just staring at the ceiling, not knowing why I was awake. And my best friend, who basically was my brother, he practically lives in our house, told me the same thing, because I called him and he said, I've been awake for 20 minutes and I don't know why. I won't tell my father in the house. But my mother was standing in the door, and this is about that moment. It's called How to Walk in Space. And I will attempt to get through this, so certainly going to get through the title. How to Walk in Space, 3:35 a.m., December 9th, 2022. My feeling was I was a grain of sand. Alexei Leonov, first man to walk in space. I wasn't asleep when the lights came on and you filled the doorway. It's happened, Joe. You said, oh my God, oh my God. And I don't remember getting out of bed or walking towards you or anything I said. If I said anything, what is there to say? But I came to you in that hallway. What do I do now? What do I do? And I put my arms around you while yours hung heavy at your side, and you leaned toward me while pulling away as if afraid the embrace would make it real. And you shook and language failed. Your sob, the groan of a ship might make in the middle of a storm as it takes on water and weight, and started to sink, and I could not tell if we were stepping out or in or just away or suddenly weightless, holding on to remain in orbit. Where flight and floating and free fall, stillness and speed are the same, and the enemy is entropy. When you start to spin and you can't come out of it. The first cosmonaut to walk in space was out there for only 12 minutes and he almost died. The oxygen meant to keep him alive, expanding in his suit because of the difference in pressure. His hands pushed from his gloves, his feet from his boots, until he had to open a latch from his suit and bleed the air into space just so he could fit back through the airlock and slam the hatch behind him. And then there's you, having spent how many years circling around him, and the last few trying to navigate with everything gone wrong. Unable to control your flight or trust in gravity. You would be the first to say so much of it was beautiful. Moments, even at the end, when he tried to smile and pull you in to dance and start to sing. And though he'd mostly rock and swing in place, hardly able to stand or move his hips, it was like the sun coming up over the edge of the world, your whole life turning beneath you. I wonder what is more frightening, to watch someone float away or be the one adrift. And so I drove you down the frozen road to his body, and we spoke of how you almost felt relieved and hated yourself for that. How in those last few weeks you'd come to dread each sundowning, and how the night would come and threaten to pull you both into its darkness, and how he kept asking to be driven home when he was sitting right there in his living room. It's time for me to go, he said. I can't stay here. And nothing anyone could say could make him believe. Even when we walked him down his own front steps and turned him around to stare at the house he'd spent half a century with you. This isn't my home, he said. And maybe it wasn't anymore. Mother, I guess I want to tell you that I don't know what heaven is or isn't or where, but I believe in re-entry, the cleansing burn of atmosphere. I know a little of the fear of taking that first breath. You are not the first to have walked in space and found yourself ready to come back, seared and shining to this world again. So I don't forget, I'm going to thank all of you for being here now. This is the last piece, and this is brand new, or newish. And thank you so much for being here. Sorry it got heavy, but it did. So this is the Orange in Winter. Yeah. I don't think it needs a lot of introduction, except, well, I won't. You'll just have to deal with it. The Orange in Winter is in the touch of Rachel's fingers, curling and uncurling in gray at my chest, when we are both exhausted and sex is the last thing on my mind. Until she steps them down my abdomen and I slide my hand past the little bumps of her spine to the waistband at her lower back. Delight is always tangled in surprise. These things that take us unaware, like a child finding $1 in the pocket of a pair of pants he only wears to church a couple times a year, laundered, soft as lambskin, full of possibility, mislaid offering, magic of what is and could be, ice cream cone, candy bar, a Super Bowl to bounce against the wall, then hide behind your back when your sisters come out. You get the idea. The shift, the turn, the parting of the lips, which is a path to a clearing. The possibility of sunlight shining in. Somewhere the sound of moving water on stones. Or maybe you are driving through winter mountains on 79 toward Cumberland, where there is nothing on the dial but angry, frightened men shouting angry, frightening things. And then, through 1,000 flakes of static, a melody. Jazz guitar, maybe, with a bend and a string dipping, diving, butterfly winged at the windshield. And the light coming through the windshield. And the light reflected are not the same light, though both can blind and burn. And the way love changes with each new lover, so you have convinced yourself you've never met before. And you have and haven't. I've been too many things and forgotten what it was to be them. At least the details of details matter. The rooms I was in, the way the light looks and the sounds around me, a son, a father of 2 boys, one living, twice a husband, once and still a widow. Though the meanings change with circumstance and situation, though the names seem wrong. Junior, the suffix still hanging by the fingertips, even though there is no senior on this earth to testify to just how much you have to lose by living. So I curse, praise the way the mind can take me back to throw me forward. I didn't get to hold my first son after he was born for almost half a day. He was blue as a bruise at birth. They had to get him going, they said, and took him away. I held Susan's hand in the recovery room while she begged me to take me to him to her. I don't remember his little body in my hands that day, and I don't know if that is the mind protecting itself from damage or damage from the accident. And now I have no idea where they went, though I have hopes. We are made of accidents, and certain words or words in combinations that have never passed our lips or haven't in years till they emerge like the urge to sing. And then you can't stop saying them, effulgent, raconteur, fervent, Ruby, Gamble, Gallivant, Cyrus, Susan, lovely. And it really is lovely, the spell they make, the groovy way they gallivant and gamble across the page through air, coloring everything, altering the way I see and what. We are made of perceiving, fervent dreamers, making up the story as we go. Don't ask me where the creek was or went or where to find it. You can't recreate the first taste of an orange, which is not just sunshine, bright and radiant, bursting in a mouth, but the shock of it. In the moment just before the peel, the seal is broken. Every orange after chases memory. But you can cup it in your hands and let it take you where it will. Linger on the snap, button, zipper, when everything is on the verge and you are come undone. Thank you. We do next, right? All right, so I have books to sell. That's very awkward. Thanks again. So,
I think what was wonderful.
Oh, yeah, we can
the stories that you told before you read the poems. That to me, it's just made so much more.
Oh,
They're beautiful things.
Well, Thank you. I think that my work's always been very story-centered. It's got a strong narrative element to it, although I think my poems are more like essays in some ways. They're very digressive. They go where they're going to go. Darius is much more focused, but that's what comes of having unmedicated ADHD. Yeah, sure, we can answer any questions if you have.
You're both really good, but totally different. I mean, it's just.
We're very. I always wanted to write like Dad and Rachie, and then I realized I would never be able to do that. So I kind of went. I feel like with both of them, I feel like kind of went the other direction. But I definitely have moments. I think when I'm writing, I'm like, "Ooh, Dad would like that line," or Rachie would really love that I wrote that, and then. Susie, this just kind of sounds like Susie. So I think we're all maybe from the people, like there's poetic lineage, family lineage.
When did you start?
I was 12.
Really?
Yeah. I think that's when I decided I kind of wanted to be a writer. Because I wrote a letter to, Iowa Meadows Elementary person, 2 people here actually, who were there when that happened. I wrote a letter to a writer named Mark Doty, and it won like a bunch of money for my middle school or my elementary school library. And then I went to one of his readings and he dedicated a poem on stage to me, and I was like, okay, that's what I want to do, because he was just so wonderful, like one of the most beautiful people I'd ever met, even briefly. I just felt it, and I wanted to make kids feel that way, or like maybe one day, so he was great.
Well, he's Darius has had a lot of teachers. And my dad was my coach, and for the longest time I refused to coach Darius. It was a problem with him. He finally yelled at me and told me to coach him, so I gave him one day where I coached him. But I've given feedback. We traded poems, but I tried very hard to let him find his own way as a writer, because I don't want to mini me. And also, there are so many other people that can help along that path. I think in some ways, he's had me, but he's also had Rachel. Rachel's an incredible poet. Her prose poems are unbelievable, and I think her presence in our lives changed both of us as writers.
Well, the letters about literature thing, actually, that was Rachie, who was like, you need to...
Rach was a tiger mom that got Darius into writing. It was not me.
No, it was.
Yeah, I was terrified.
You should have been here too,
She gave a hard no to that one.
She's been doing a lot of readings, because her book just came out, Alight, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, if you don't have her book Alight, you should order it.
I can't wait to get all of your books.
Yeah, I mean, just like anyone else, your parents bring you up, but they're not the only people who bring you up. And if you're lucky as a parent, you can surround your child with people. And I've been very fortunate with Darius, surrounded by amazing people.
So how long have you been writing?
I started much later. I started in high school, but it's embarrassing. I wrote a poem for a girl that I wanted to date who was a dancer, so I thought she'd like poem. I don't have it, thank God. And the really upsetting part of the story is that it worked, and I dated her, and it was a disaster. It was disaster. Danica Connors is a terrible. This is fake live stream, so I really shouldn't say that. But not a match. I don't really. So I always wanted to be a singer. I always wanted to be in a band and sing. Really just wanted to be Elvis Presley, which was, but not professionally. And I still I write music, but in my garage, and occasionally I inflict it on people. But you're surrounded by all sorts of influences. And, Darius has been very fortunate in other ways to have a lot of great ones. And genetically, I suppose. Yeah. I mean, Susie was a terrific poet. So,
Where did you get the inspiration?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I read is like the main thing, and I think that started from when I was little. My mom died when I was 3 years old, so I don't have any memories of her. But she did write a book called That Kind of Sleep that I had, and reaching down and reading them before bed often, and they would talk about her a lot. And I think the first project I had was to try to commune with her in poetry. She existed in that space still to me, and I could enter it. And it's seemingly whenever, like, I mean, it doesn't always work, but sometimes it does feel really spiritual to be writing a poem. And I do feel really connected to her. And so I think that project has extended to sort of a lifelong thing where it's like, I contend with my grief and with my memory and my lack of memory and and then, poets have taught me to bring joy into the mix, and all my poems turn into love poems to the people who are here. And that's kind of, and also poems that invite other voices who aren't physically here to kind of come down for a moment. So that's something I really do believe in poetry, that can happen. So, yeah, I think that's where I get my inspiration, is when I'm feeling. I think I was an only child too, and I lost my brother in that same accident. And I think I wrote a lot when I was lonely. And I have a lot of really wonderful friends, but I always have felt a bit lonely because I lost my brother. So we were tight. So yeah, that's probably my main source of inspiration is family.
It's beautiful.
When you swap poems with one another, is it hard to be objective about poems that can potentially be about you?
I don't try to be objective at all. I'm not his teacher. That's not my goal. So mostly, I mean, every once in a while I'll have a small suggestion, but for the most part, he knows what he's doing.
And I'll tell Dad, you need to lose half this poem.
Yeah, actually, that's kind of true. He gives me much more constructive critique, and I'm just sort of like, this is amazing. I love it. And he's like, yeah, but you weren't, are you uncomfortable about that part about you? And I'm like, it's true. I mean, I don't expect, so, you write about family, and it can be a little uncomfortable. And Darius has written some uncomfortable things like that piece about me finding his, but I thought I handled that pretty well, actually. But I did not yell at him or get angry. At least that I remember.
Yeah.
I thought I handled it pretty well.
Revise that.
Yeah. But I think what most of us need to be seen, but also known. And I think one of the scariest things possible is to live in a whole life without anybody knowing. So when Darius writes about me, and if he gets it right, even if it's not always flattering, at least I've been seen. So I see that as a blessing.
Yeah, I feel like it brings us all closer in a lot of ways, because we say things in our poems we wouldn't necessarily say to each other in words, in conversation. I try to a lot, but it's nice to have a little more time to think about what you're trying to say and what you mean. So I think we do this thing where once in a while we'll share words, and I think every time we do that, it's really a beautiful thing, and I feel much closer to my parents after we do that. Where we'll come down stairs and do a little writing session and then read what we wrote.
Family writing time, and we share words.
Yeah, and I think that's where I got the last poem I read.
We're a strange thing.
That's pretty good.
No, it's fun. I don't know. My girlfriend came, and she's a songwriter, and she did that with us one time, and she sang a song that she'd written, and she was like, I wish I had this growing up. And it made me really feel lucky to be.
Did she go in the garage and play with your dad?
No,
We've never played together.
I'm not good at music.
I thought about claiming.
It's girlfriend. Oh, yeah, she's great.
Isabella Farmer, if you want to look her up on Spotify.
Yeah. She and Dad should definitely.
She's actually trained Darius. So. The guy who figured out how to write songs on YouTube, play songs on YouTube. But we have I have a nephew who's an actor. My dad always sang. My mother was a ballet dancer. That's just, my dad was a professional actor. So, it was kind of always expected in my family that you be on stage somehow doing something.
So what did he do? What kind of acting or
My father?
theater, films?
No, my dad was an athlete. He was a baseball player. But he also sang, his beautiful singing voice, and could dance. That was one of the hardest things when he got old. He was so smooth. I mean, he could move. You try to remember the way a person was at the best moments in their lives.
Definitely.
Rach is telling me to wrap it up. We're wrapping it up. Okay, all right.
I want to ask